Okay. So tonight, really just going to be looking at the mark allocation for assignment 2. The whole idea why I do this is because these you've obviously noticed these rubrics are not the most user-friendly. I do think, I don't know, maybe the people that actually design these rubrics, I don't know if they're actual lecturers or if maybe they were lecturers, but it just sometimes feels like they've lost a bit of touch, but then it might just be me. It might just be me. I'm not going to, everyone has their own way of doing things. But the reason why I do this is because I need to mark your assignments based on my interpretation of the rubric. I cannot obviously interpret it in 15,000 different ways. So then I just find it's easier for me to, yeah. Again, that with philosophy, and I've said this a few times, you do not have to interpret the way that I have. As long as you can support and give evidence, then it's all good. Okay, so let's look at question 1. So with question 1, they've given you 3 statements, and each of those statements relates to a normative philosophy that we have done this semester. Please do not make the same mistake that some of you did in assignment 1. Do not go and discuss all of them. The idea is you select one. So you select one of those statements, and I'm assuming, select one that kind of resonates or appeals to you the most. And then you need to tell me to which philosophy that statement belongs, and then to give a brief explanation of that philosophy as it relates to the statement. So in other words, if you're going to say statement 1 is African philosophy, then you have to say to me why. You have to say, well, African philosophy doesn't really look at student interests, and that's kind of what is in statement 1. In other words, so basically, for 2 marks, or 3 marks maybe, you're going to explain to me why you say that statement belongs to that particular philosophy. Okay, so 1 mark for getting it correct, and then 3 marks. If you get it wrong, and this has happened in the past, if you get it wrong, let's say, for example, you say statement 1 is African philosophy, which it clearly is not, then you lose 1 mark. Actually, no, the decision was, I remember now, we had a national discussion on this. The decision was that you don't get marks, those first 4 marks, because if you're going to get the statement wrong, then you're going to explain to me why that statement belongs with a certain philosophy, but it's incorrect. Okay, so, but that is the only 4 marks you can lose. So I will still look at your understanding of that philosophy, how you've integrated it into your own discipline, how you've provided me with substantial examples. So even though you've made the connection incorrect with the statement, I will still continue to mark the question based on the philosophy that you have selected. Does that make sense? You're basically just going to lose the 4 marks. All right, so once you've identified the statement that appeals to you, and you've identified the philosophy, and you've given me 3 reasons why, you're then going to go on for 6 marks. You're going to explain a little bit more in detail of the key principles that belong to that philosophy. Again, nothing too complicated. And can I just reiterate again, compared to assignment 1, do not give me pages and pages and pages of information for 6 marks. But with that, I'm not saying, limit yourself. If you feel you need to write, then you need to write. I do not want to stop the process of academic writing. But yeah, just bear the points in mind, and obviously your time. So 6 marks for that. And then for another 6 marks, you are going to show me how you can integrate this philosophy with your discipline. So if your discipline is agricultural studies, and you have selected the philosophy of, just use African philosophy because it's not part of the normative ones. And then, you can say that in my discipline, I look at the principles of community, and when I lecture so that my students understand communal farming, whatever, blah blah blah. I'm really thumb sucking here, but so the point is, I need to see that you're able to integrate the philosophy into your discipline. And then for 5 marks, you need to give me some good examples. Now, you do not necessarily have to give me 5 examples, but at least make whatever you give worth 5 marks. So, you might give me an example that speaks to 3 elements of that philosophy. Then that'll be 3 marks. So good examples, and then 2 marks for having at least 4 resources that you've used. Your reference list must be at least 4 references long, and 2 marks in for academic writing. So those are 4 giveaway marks. So that's basically question 1. Very easy question, nothing too complicated there, or nothing, no hidden agenda with that question. Just again, remember, with your assignment 2, I'm going to be a little bit more strict with in-text referencing. Those of you who lost marks for that in assignment 1, please, you need to go and have a look at why, and so that you're not making the same mistake twice, because then your percentage deduction could go up to 10%. Again, you don't want to lose 10% for something that you have control over. Okay, any questions, uncertainties, anything around question 1 that you'd like to ask me before I move on to question 2? All good, thanks, Anel. Zach is clear. Good. Okay. Please, if I don't stop or you need me to stop, yes, Jabalila, you select 1 statement. So do not select all 3. Do not proceed to explain all 3 to me. Select 1 and you go with that one. So, and I'm happy for you. You do not have to retype the statement. You can just say, I select statement 3. It fits in with African philosophy. These are the reasons. And then you continue to give me the reasons, and then again explain the philosophy, etc., etc. Okay, good. Right, moving on to question 2. Great. As long as we're clear so far. Okay, can everybody see question 2 on the screen? Thank you. Okay, now question 2, a little bit more complicated, and well, they all have a lot of scope for your own interpretation. But question 2 is a lesson plan, a progressivism lesson plan. Sorry, I'm trying to say that quickly, and it has to do with interior design. So those of you who are into interior design or that kind of field, you will definitely be able to relate to this lesson plan. But if you are an IT person or a maths person or accountancy, it might be a bit difficult. But it doesn't matter. It's a lesson plan, and you're going to be analyzing the elements of this lesson plan. So the first part of this question for 10 marks, you're literally going to describe or identify the progressivist elements in the lesson plan with examples. So here you don't have to do 10 elements, you can do 5, but then each one you need to refer to something in the lesson plan. So if you say that this lesson plan has the element of critical thinking, that it encourages, and that's an element of progressivism, then you need to tell me where in the lesson plan do you see that. Is it in the role play activity? Is it in the assessment activity? Where do you see that? Okay, so does that make sense? So identify 5 elements and then give me the corresponding part in the lesson plan that you feel connects with progressivism. That's for 10 marks. Then moving away from the lesson plan, you're just going to critique progressivism for 10 marks. Actually, no, sorry, I'm confusing you. I'm lying to you. You're not moving away from the lesson plan just yet. You're still using the lesson plan. You're going to critique progressivism. So in other words, you're going to say in the lesson plan, there is, for example, a part where it says, I'm just trying to find one here quickly, that the students are encouraged to look at alternative resources. And let's say you don't think that fits in with progressivism at all. So then you'd say, okay, you know, this is part of the lesson plan, but it doesn't really fit in with progressivism. They should rather have done X, Y, and Z. That would have been more a progressivist element. Again, not a lot. You can identify maybe 3 things, elements within the lesson plan that you want to critique. It doesn't have to be against. It can be for. So critiquing is you know, not necessarily that it's always negative. So you could say, you know, obviously it's going to be difficult because in the first question you've highlighted the 5 elements that do fit in with progressivism, and so in the next part you're going to look at things that maybe don't. You know, like maybe you want to say the role play is part of the lesson plan. Maybe you said that's not really something that fits into progressivism, or maybe there's a part of Socratic questioning, you know, where they questioning, that doesn't really fit in with progressivism. So whatever, again, not a lot. If you find 3 or 4 examples and you critique them, you know, well, substantiate information from the lesson plan, then that'll give you your 10 marks. Then for 8 marks, you're going to move away from the lesson plan and you're going to, for your own opinion, you're going to justify the use of this particular philosophy. Okay, let me rephrase it. So you're going to give your opinion as to whether this philosophy was the best for this kind of lesson plan, or whether this particular lecturer should have rather focused on a different philosophy. And then you need to say why. So you can stick to progressivism. Might be at this stage a little bit difficult because you've now discussed it quite extensively. But you might say, you know, maybe, you know, next time this lecture could look at the philosophy of essentialism, because, you know, this particular way of doing this lesson, or maybe the topic or the skill or the concept that this lecture is trying to get across to his or her students might be better if the lesson plan was designed in a more, from an essentialist point of view, or from a idealistic point of view, whichever other philosophy you would have rather used. But as long as you can justify it, and yeah, I know 8 marks is a lot, but you know, if you discuss 4 things of why you should or why you shouldn't, you know, you discuss them well enough, then you could get your 8 marks. Okay, so I'm confusing this lesson plan with another question. So in actual fact, you don't move away from the lesson plan at all. So scrap all the parts where I said move away from the lesson plan. I'm actually thinking of the 3rd question. So the 4th part of this question is that you're going to provide examples from the lesson plan to substantiate your conclusion. So here again, if you're going to say to me that this lecturer should rather have used idealism as their philosophy to design this lesson, then you're going to say, you're obviously going to say to me why, you're going to justify why, and then you're going to give me examples from the lesson. And you're going to say, well, to get your students to imagine the interior of a room using their creativity, and maybe using what do you call those boards? Oh my word. Oh my word. Anyway, everybody uses them these days, but you know, when you put up your different ideas and your dreams or whatever. Vision board. Oh, Zach, lifesaver. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, I see you guys, this is your lingo, this is your style. So, you know, you could maybe say, you know, using a vision board that doesn't really fit in with progressivism, maybe you should rather use idealism or whatever. So yeah, by the end of this question, you have unpacked this lesson plan to its last degree. And then 4 marks are for 4 resources and 4 marks for academic writing. I think I really think they're giving away marks for this question, but hey, I mean, so 10 marks, five elements, addressing 5 elements of progressivism and giving me examples in the lesson plan. Then 5 or 4 things of the lesson plan that you think don't really fit in with progressivism and why. And then your conclusion, okay, these were the things that worked, these were the things that didn't work. Maybe for you, there were more things that didn't work in the lesson plan. So I would rather go with a realist approach or an essentialist approach or whatever the case may be, social constructionism, whatever. And these are the reasons. And these are the parts in the lesson plan that I think, no, that will be much better from a social constructivism point of view or from an essentialist point of view. Right. Does that make sense? Kind of for question 2. Sorry, I think I misled you. Well, I did. I misled you, but I really thought the last part of this question would move away from the lesson plan, but we didn't really. Yes, talk to me,
Hi.
Noxie.
Hi, Doctor. So for questions 2, if I can just see if I understand or if I'm following. The first question for 10 marks, it's we identifying the progressivism or progressivist elements that are in the lesson plans. Then we discuss them by providing the examples from the lesson plans, right?
Yes.
Then we wanna then move to the second one, which is now this is where we critiquing them.
Yes.
It can be positive or negative, but based on the lesson plan.
On the
Then
lesson
when
plan,
we
yes.
conclude now, it's more of like maybe we are making a recommendation if you want to. If you obviously feel like the elements in the lesson plans are working, then you just substantiate and state why it's fine. But if I feel like I wanna um apply or say maybe they can consider these other maybe elements of this philosophy, then I can conclude by saying that.
Yes, yes, and you can select more than one. So,
Yeah.
if you feel there's that in this particular lesson plan to get this particular message across or skill or concept across to your students, that maybe you could use a bit of idealism and a bit of African philosophy or a bit of, whatever, perennialism or whatever the case may be. So, and then give me reasons why you say that. What part of the lesson plan do you think fits in better with a different philosophy?
Okay.
So
I think
it's quite a bit of, I would almost say, repetition. So that's why when you answer this question, don't unpack the elements in more detail as opposed to giving a lot of elements. It gives you space. So let's say, for example, in the first part, you're going to find 5 things in the lesson plan that is definitely progressivist, and you're going to tell me what they are. And then you're going to maybe find 3 or 4 or 5 things that borderline, or maybe 1 or 2 more that definitely are, but there's 3 or 4 that no, I don't think this is a progressivist element of the lesson plan at all. And then in your conclusion for that, you're going to say, well, this lesson plan was intended to be from a progressivist point of view, but due to these 2 or 3 or 4 elements, I think no, and due to whatever they want to get across, the concept they want to get across, I don't think this is the best approach. Or I've identified, 5 or 6 or 7 elements in this lesson plan that are definitely progressivism, and as far as I'm concerned, 90% of this is the best voted for this reason and this reason, because of what progressivism is about. So, Jabulile, I completely understand. As from a financial person point of view, philosophy is a challenge. It is a challenge, but yeah, just try not to repeat yourself, because that's what often happens with this particular question, because yeah, it seems to be going around in circles, and trust me, I don't know if you've looked at the rubric for this question, but it's horrific. I mean, trying to just understand what they're actually getting at in the rubric, and that's why I unpacked it in this way. So when yes, the session is being recorded, Zach. So that's why I put it out like this, because for marking purposes, it's a whole lot easier for me, because then I go in and I know what I'm looking for, as opposed to, what on earth does this rubric want? So yeah, it just seems to be a disconnect between the rubrics and the actual instruction for these questions. I'm not too sure why. Okay, so that's question 2. That is out of 10, 20, 28, 30, 40. Yeah, I see. That's very easy, 40 marks. Yeah. All right. Can we move on to question 3? Question 3 is a nice, easy one. Great. Thanks, Noxie. Okay, so question 3 is John Dewey and technology. So this question is obviously going to be looking at integrating technology into your classroom, but obviously John Dewey in his day never had technology. However, his philosophy was, his education philosophy was synonymous with growth. So he didn't want teaching or education to be stagnant and to just keep using the same methods year in and year out. And so the reason why they put Dewey and technology together is because obviously in this 4IR era, technology is the growth, and it is where we are not stagnating and moving forward and doing things different. So this particular question wants you to write an essay in which you discuss whether or not the incorporation of technology in higher education is a negative, has a negative effect on your students' growth or development. And they want you to refer to Dewey's vision of growth as an educational aim. So the way I've broken down the rubric is that you first of all explain Dewey's philosophy and how it relates to growth and democracy. So you're not going to mention anything there about technology. And then you're going to look at the impact of incorporating technology into your lecture room and how that relates to Dewey. So you would have to then tie in his elements of his philosophy with using technology. And I know it sounds very vague now, but you'll see when you start researching and looking at his philosophy, it's not that difficult. And then how would integrating technology apply in your discipline? So sorry, the one above is just in general, incorporating technology into the lecture room in general, and how this relates to Dewey, and then how integrating technology applies to your discipline. If it, and it doesn't have to be complicated technology, it can just be maybe you use a projector, or maybe you use you use your cell phone and you get students to download apps, or you do a poll, you take polls, or anything really, anything related to technology that works with electricity or a battery. I know one of the what can I call it? One of the categories that our 4th year students have to do or look into when they go and do their teaching prac in schools, they have to integrate technology. And I had to supervise this poor student who had been allocated a school, literally a farm school. There were 4 prefabs. That was all that was in this huge field on this farm. And the particular day that I went to go and supervise him, they had no electricity. And his lesson was this integrating technology lesson. And what he had done, so clever, he had brought a CD player with, and he found batteries. And he put the batteries in and he played the CD player with a song. His lesson was an Afrikaans lesson. So he played this Afrikaans song and the learners had to learn it. And, you know, that wasn't major complicated technology, but I had to give him the marks because he made do with what he had. And I thought that was just very sweet. Anyway, that's completely off the topic. So, yeah, so how do you integrate? The point I want to make is it doesn't have to be fancy, high-tech technology. Just how do you integrate technology into your discipline? And that's for 8 marks. And then for 6 marks, providing examples. So yeah, you can really give me a lot of examples because that's a lot of marks. So if you say to me, you know, I incorporate the use of cell phones in my lecture, then, you know, give me 2 or 3 examples of how and what you do, what the students have to do on their cell phones, or if you incorporate, you know, I don't know, these interactive whiteboards or interactive games, or whatever it is that you use. You should just give me some good examples there. Not long explanations, you know, 1 sentence. I use Kahoot that the students use on their phone and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's just simple like that. And then you're going to critique, you're going to look at the advantages and the disadvantages of incorporating technology. I mean, that's actually easy. I think that you could do without even thinking about it. And then 4 marks for your resources and 3 marks for your academic writing. So not a complicated question at all, I think. I think it's a nice, easy one, a very relevant and topical one. And yeah, quite a bit of freedom. And in actual fact, all of these questions, there's a lot of freedom in them. You know, again, it just needs to make sense. Yes, academic writing. So because this is assignment 2, so what I look for generally, I look for an introduction, not a long, complicated one, just one where you touch on what you're going to be discussing. I mean, you could summarize the question, or you could, some people even, you know, give 1 or 2 definitions in the intro just to kind of focus the reader onto what is happening. But again, not a long, complicated intro, but I do look for one. Then obviously the structure of your writing, do your paragraphs flow, and do you complete a concept or a thought before you start a different paragraph? And then very importantly, a conclusion. And a lot of students leave out the conclusion because, yeah, as I said in my previous, they leave it out because they get carried away, or they think, oh, I'm done, I'm finally done, and then they just end it off. So just give 1 or 2 sentences, you know, in conclusion, or due to this, or you know, now in retrospect, or reflecting on this, whatever, just 1 or 2 sentences just to wrap it up. Doesn't have to be new information. You could just, yeah, summarize or wrap up. And then so those are the 3 marks. And then if it's like 4 marks, then, you know, obviously then I'll look at your in-text referencing, but that is kind of the section on its own. If you make 1 or 2 in-text referencing errors or format errors, I really don't worry about it. But if you continually make the same mistake, then I definitely deduct a percentage depending on how bad it is. So yeah, if you get your referencing correct, then you don't need to lose marks. Then be very careful of using sources that don't have dates or that are anonymous. There's so many articles available that, yeah, try not to use, yeah. And website references are fine, but don't only use them. If you know what I mean? Like try and have a sort of a balanced resource pool. Okay, that is all from me. Is there anything you want to ask me or just comment on? Absolute pleasure, Roxanne, and I really, and I hope it goes well. I mean, you still got what, about a week, just over a week for this assignment still left. So If you take a little bit every night, you'll be fine. And it's not about pages and pages. You just say what you need to say, and I can see, I know what you want to say, then that's absolutely fine. Great. Well, you all have a great evening. How many pages? Oh, that's a good question. Lisimelo, I never ever look at pages. I don't even look at word count. I'm very bad in that way. I read what is given me. So it's difficult to say. I think if you feel you've answered the question and you've got enough information for the marks allocated, then that's it. I'm not going to, there are word counts for each question, Anel, but to be really honest, I don't look at word count. If the word count was in the rubric and it counted against you, different story, 1 page. Well, if you can get all this information in 1 page, hey, you deserve a medal from my side. So yeah, you just do the question, answer as well as what you can, and just remember, don't go over on and on and on. It's 4 marks. Give me 4 facts and then move on. So yeah, every question. I do prefer every question on its own page. It does make it a whole lot easier for me to mark, because the way I mark all the question 1s of all the students, and then I mark all the question 2s. So it also just helps to break the, because if I mark one person's question 1, 2, and 3, I find that I start kind of like preempting what they're going to say, because I get into a rhythm of how they type, and I don't like that, because then I feel like I might be missing something. So I like to mark all the same questions first. I don't know if that's how you guys mark as well. And then also it gives me an idea of where everyone is at. So, and that also determines the way I mark. If I see everybody's making exactly the same mistake, then I've got to go back and think, well, maybe just a different way. Yeah, it is the best way to mark. To me, that goes quicker. So to answer your question, yes, every question, different page, definitely helps me. Please do not forget to PDF your document. And if possible, and you remember, please can you prefix the file name with your name? I don't really mind how you do it after that, but when I download them, and I mark them according to the mark sheet, and the mark sheet is in alphabetical order according to your name. So, but it's not a crisis if you don't. That is a luxury for me. So it's not a major thing, but PDF and every question on a different page. And with regards to referencing, because this particular rubric gives mark allocations for every question referencing, then obviously you would have to reference at the end of every question. So that'll also make it easier. Great. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a fantastic evening and a great week. Enjoy Wednesday, although I'm sure you'll all be working on assignments. But yes, thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Jabulile. I will definitely, it's going to be good just not to have to get up early on Wednesday morning. But have a good week, and I will upload this recording as well as the marks, as well as the recording that I did before this for tonight's recorded set. So I will upload that all now this evening. So you have no excuse not to be bored. You will definitely not be bored. But have a good evening, and enjoy, and we'll chat again. We'll chat next week. Goodbye, everyone. Pleasure, Naval.